First, I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for all of your hard work as people leaders, as culture champions. This work is so important. This movement is something dear to my heart, and I know tracking things over the past 10, 15 years, we're gaining momentum and legitimacy after working to show that we need to treat people well. We need to care about each other. It actually matters, and it brings business returns. And that has been an unpopular point of view for a while, and in many organizations, it still is. But through the perseverance of so many people here, and many others who are not here, we're able to unite under this incredible sense of being a movement. I also want to thank Culture Amp for creating a tool that helps legitimize and quantify what's often invisible. That's so much of what our work is about, is how do we make the invisible visible and valued and something that we can become more literate with. And then, what's before us? What's at the edge? What's next? What is still invisible that we can help bring to light? Because we've made wonderful progress, and where do we have to go from here? I'm going to start by answering that question with my background as an ecosystem scientist, as an ecological designer, specializing in biomimicry and wildlife tracking, because I always think of organizations as organisms. We're not machines. We're deeply organic. And as organisms, we are imbued with deep sensing and the intelligence to understand what we need to thrive. I studied culture at the national and worldview level, and also at the organizational level, starting 15 years ago. I was also an ecosystem scientist at that point. And I saw how deeply systems operations knit together. But it wasn't until I had a near-fatal accident 7 years ago when I fell off the top of a waterfall in Golden Gate Park and almost bled out to death after bouncing on a rock, and then had to heal, that I learned the innate intelligence in our beings to self-correct, to move through blockage, and to learn how to thrive. And we have so much more sensing ability than we tap into, individually, collectively, and in our large organizations. This is one of our greatest intelligences that we don't call on. So we're going to start with a quick practice around self-sensing. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and close your eyes and drop into your body, because I want to give you the experience right now of the amount of intelligence and wisdom in this instrument, this being, this body that we inhabit. So we're going to do yes/no questions for round one, and these are softball questions, so they should be pretty easy to begin with. So I'm going to ask questions. You are going to register the information internally, quietly in your own body. This is not a vocal response time. So first, I invite you to notice yes, no. Are you hungry? Next, I invite you to notice yes or no. Are you thirsty? Now I invite you to notice, are you as comfortable as you possibly could be in the way that you are sitting or standing in this moment? Yes or no? Now I want you to notice if you're breathing as deeply as you would like in this moment. Yes or no? Now go ahead and open your eyes up. We're going to do a round two. But I've done this exercise with hundreds of business leaders and children also. This is a very easy exercise. And I always ask people, did you get clear information? And everyone's like, uh-huh. And I'm like, did you know immediately? And they're like, uh-huh. And then I'm curious, can you raise your hands if you noticed something from one of those questions that you weren't aware of prior? Loud and proud, higher, much higher. Okay, and then now, no, come on, keep playing. We're high and we're like data scientists and people geeks, so look around. So it's like, I'd say 50% of the room became aware of something in their body that they weren't aware of prior to asking. So there's a power in asking questions to guide our sensing. And then also what's so important about the practice of developing sensing of our own being is how can we be effective at sensing more complex systems if we're not sensing and consistently responding to the information from our own body? So I'm just going to like put that there and we'll come back to it. So go ahead and close your eyes again, and we're going to do a round 2. So what's fascinating is we can get not only yes or no information from our body, and this is not thinking. Feeling is not thinking. This is sensing. So you're going to get information based on the following questions, likely, that is more complex than a yes or no. So the first question is, on a scale of 0 to 100, if 0 is basically dead, about to die, and 100 is the most energy you've ever had in your life and you feel amazing, where's your energy right now in this moment? Again, please register it internally. And then if you're not at 100, what could you do today or this week to get closer to 100? Go ahead and open your eyes. So, how many people, please raise your hands, were at 100% energy? 0! I have never done this exercise and gotten a 100. Amazing. Oh my gosh. And then how many of you, please raise your hands, got information of what you could do to get to a higher level of energy than you're currently at? Yeah. Wow. Like you didn't have to think about it. Your body just knows how to correct and how to move towards vitality. That is the nature of living systems. That's true in ourselves. That's also true for our teams and our organizations. And this is a power that we can tap into. One of the interesting things is when we're not listening to ourselves regularly and we're not correcting, it actually clouds our listening. Which is a great segue to what is it that gets in the way of our listening. If listening is important, if we get valuable information, if we can sense deeply, what blocks it? There are 3 things I want to mention. So the first is that often our sensing capacities are very atrophied. They're atrophied for a number of reasons. So one, in our culture, we prize intelligence in the form of intellect. We actually think that intellect is the only form of intelligence that exists. We don't prize sensing as a form of intelligence. But we have multiple intelligences, and you just got information from that. So there's a baseline. We don't value sensing. If we don't value sensing, which we don't really have role models at sensing. So then we're all walking around with incredibly highly developed brains and like lower than kindergarten level body awareness. If any of your parents and you have young children, your young children probably have more awareness of their body and their body's needs than you do because you've learned how to shut it off because we think that the mind is all that matters. But then the consequences of the atrophy through not having cultural role model and our culture not caring about it is that if we don't use it, we lose it. And so then we're not really good at it, so then it's uncomfortable, so then we don't want to do it. So we have a positive feedback loop, positive being reinforcing, not beneficial. So we don't sense. So if we have atrophied sensing, there's also this very interesting thing that usually never gets talked about in the culture space, is power, and how power dynamics work in groups. So if sensing is this powerful intelligence, and you can feel sensing feels relationships, and it's almost like a musical instinct. Is something harmonious and resonant, or is it dissonant and out of tune? And as people who are stewards of communities, of other people, you're constantly sensing. And most culture stewards and champions and people geeks are highly sensitive feelers. You can often feel what's going on in groups, which is why you're in your jobs, which is why you're good at your jobs. But then here's where the fun with power comes in. Sanctioned power in our business structures today is often valued over personal power. So what does that mean? We currently operate under command and control style ways of working. So you just played the Mars simulation with Aaron from the Ready, and you started out in a command and control system where there are highly regimented rules, where someone who's given a role is sanctioned authority, and that's what we see as power. And that's also tied to our whole compensation structure and job security and sense of safety and belonging. And so then we have this concentration of given power up in usually the executive suite, and then people moderate their behavior around those structures however they need to try and get their work done without actually being in clear relationship. So we hold back our sensing basically because we don't want to lose our jobs. Which comes to this last one, that people champions are often caught in a double bind. Because you can sense often more sensitively than anyone else in your organization, but you're also in this kind of still fringe part of the business ecosystem that's awkward, called people operations and culture and caring about humans, which still isn't a largely accepted meme in how we do business, then you often have an inner struggle between standing for the truth and saying what you see and keeping your job and getting the small wins. We don't usually talk about this. And this is a heaviness that I have coached so many people leaders in. What do? I feel trapped. One of the things we can do is we can redefine our relationship to power. So I love words and dictionaries and etymology. So Merriam-Webster, definition of power, a couple different options. So one definition of power is the ability to act or perform, able to do something. It's also a source of energy. Then it gets super weird when power is defined as authority or decision-making control over others. Okay, that's more what power is defined as in our businesses. But then I went into the etymological dictionary. And back in the 13th century was when they tagged the ability to succeed, exert might and strength, especially in battle, as originating linguistically. So sometimes we forget that we're in this branch of the unfolding of human history that got pulled away from our indigenous roots a long time ago when we're in the Western civilization mindset. That's not the only definition of power in the human family. Another definition from an organizational consultant and shaman named Jose Luis Stevens is that power is not something we own. You can't own it. He says power is taking ever more responsibility for ourselves. To open to power is to actually become like a channel or a vessel so that more and more energy can move through you and that you can direct it with your intention. Similarly, in Taoist practices like Qigong and Tai Chi, Qigong is a practice of mine in my life, which is a practice of energy cultivation, The concept of accumulated power is the ability to experience and steward more energy. So that's a very different sense of controlling people than being able to experience and direct energy. There's a nuance, but it's important. It's important because if we want to step into our personal power and if we want to elevate the power of everyone in our systems and cultivate power that serves, which is what a people-first workplace does, then we have to change our relationship to that concept. And one of the ways we can get there is by going into the crunchy stuff. So, we're going to do another practice. In your sensing, you just sensed your body and you found areas of ease and alignment and aliveness in a living system manifests. And if we had time and space, I would ask you, but since it's a couple hundred of you, I'm just going to spill the beans on the pattern. So aliveness manifests as openness, as ease, as flow, as spaciousness, whereas tension manifests as tightness, coldness, distance, smallness. You're constantly sensing that, perhaps even more acutely in the people you serve than you do in your own being. But part of my invitation to you today is to listen as deeply inwardly as you do outwardly. Because you can only steward outward aliveness in your teams by stewarding your own inward aliveness. Oftentimes, people leaders are deeply depleted. But welcome to the United States of America in 2018, where depletion is the new black. So in this practice, I'm going to invite you to listen into your body, and we're going to use our somatic intelligence again, where I want you to listen for what's the truth about your organization or your leadership team that if you spoke it out loud, you'd want to throw up on your feet. That it's you'd rather just projectile vomit than say this thing out loud. And then I want you to listen to why you have such a strong response to the possibility of speaking that truth out loud. What are the beliefs you hold about the consequences of that truth coming into the light of day? And I invite you to turn next to the person seated beside you, and you're going to share your vulnerable observations about your organizations. And you each get about 2 minutes, and I'll give you a verbal ding with a bird call or something. So go ahead and connect and share vulnerably about what it is that you noticed. Now I'm going to invite you to wrap up your last comments, bring your thoughts to a close, and thank your partners for sharing these things that we are usually unwilling to speak into the light of day. Facilitator technology. We gotta play, oh my gosh. All right, so thank you so much for speaking, and also part of me is deeply conflicted about breathing aggressively into the microphone to call you back, because we all need space to speak these things that we hide in the shadows, but that we hold in our consciousness all the time, that churn in our guts. You have been aware of this thing. You have not been wanting to say this thing because you are a feeling being who cares about all the people you work with. And you want the best for them, and you want the best for your organization. And you may not see a way that bringing it to light could ever make a difference. And we can become disappointed and heavy about that. But the first step is recognizing oh, I've got a crick in my neck. Or like, oh, I'm thirsty. Or like, oh, when you do that in meetings, it shuts everyone down and you don't realize because you have the biggest paycheck. Like, your ideas aren't always right. So, thank you for going into the shadows. Because it's from here that we can ask, how can we initiate change? What can we do? And there are three main genres of solution of what we can do. First, we can do the inner work. We can do the inner work to become sensors. We can do the inner work to release fear from our beings. We can do the inner work to become a stand that is so heartfelt and sees possibility and holds possibility for all of our colleagues and doesn't operate under the illusion that command and control systems create. We can say, I'm not here to attack you when I say this out loud. I'm bringing this forward because I love you. I love you. And I want to collaborate better. And I can do that by cultivating my own inner posture oriented towards aliveness, that I can take care of myself because when I'm depleted, things don't come out well. I'm not creative and I can't feel effectively. So letting go of addiction to depletion and overworking is an important first step in the discipline of being an empowered and empowering people leader. We also can exercise curiosity about others, about what's possible. We can commit to our truth. We can commit to being courageous and championing the courage of others, to encouraging experimentation, and knowing that we don't have to get it right every time and that we can actually love each other as we grow, and that mistakes will not be shamed. They will be learned from. We can be kind as we hold clear boundaries. We can walk together. All of this is within the realm of your own personal authority. You don't need sanctioning to do this. And yes, if you bring a truth forward, you may have the consequences of your current work arrangement dissolving if it is too much of a threat to the system and the leaders and the people and the consciousness that you're currently part of a team with. But we inflate the fear of that outcome so much more than it actually is oftentimes. So then the second step is we can do the inner work together. We can engage our colleagues in the recognition that we have been inhabiting a skin and an identity that does not serve us. Every being that grows, and humans get this all the time, is that as we grow, we shed identities, we shed behaviors. And so much like snakes, we need to shed our skin. And when we do that consciously, together, in ways that imprint meaning of what we're releasing and what we're picking up, then we can step into this growth journey with spaciousness, with that aliveness, rather than with fear and mistrust. And to say, I'm walking with you, let's go there together. One of the ways that I personally do that is through rites of passage. We are symbolic animals. We need to make meaning. We need to say, this is who we were. This worked when we were a startup. But just like we don't expect an 8-year-old child when they're 16 years old to be acting exactly the same, because some of those behaviors no longer serve, but there are aspects of their being that are their essence, that if they lost would be a tragedy. The exact same thing is true about organizations. Your organization has an essence, it has a heart, it has a spirit that each of you, I know, champions. That's why we're in this building together. That's why I'm saying thank you to you. You are the stand for that essence. But we also have to watch out for what no longer serves. And we have to regularly choose to put it down and step into the mystery and ask what serves now. Who can we be now? And that is scary AF. Self-censoring video. Stepping into the mystery is inherently terrifying for human beings. And so we have to do that lovingly, forgivingly. We have to bless each other. Bless you. We have to say, I know this is hard. I want to throw up on my feet. Do you want to throw up on your feet? Great, we can energetically do that and then go do something new, which can be exhilarating. So we create practices of being uncomfortable. We create practices of talking about our learning. We create practices of showing our vulnerability, celebrating our failures, and stepping back if we're used to being on the front stage and having a lot of power, because we want to bring out the innate intelligence of our whole system, which is where we start doing the outer work together. And all of these layers have to happen in tandem. So this is a shout out to my friends and my colleagues at the Ready, who are helping organizations transition from command and control ways of working to self-organizing and adaptive and responsive ways of working. This is the distributed, intelligence, organic, organismic, alive, living way of working. And that all of us in this room are somewhere on that change curve. No one is in the arrived space. So we're all in process. We're all learning from each other. And that creating those new ways of working are part of what's necessary. If we do the inner work without shifting the outer structures, it doesn't work. If we do the outer work without shifting the inner structures and how we relate to power, it doesn't work. We have to move it all together. And what's one of the amazing pieces about getting passionate about listening into discomfort, about going into discomfort, is that each of these tightnesses, each of these seeming areas of poison or challenge or tension contain the information for the antidote within them. And you just experienced that in our self-sensing exercise where I asked you where your energy was, you felt it, and then listening into the tension actually told you what you need to do to self-correct your system. This is like literal magic. It's like, oh, I just need to listen. Like, oh, I need to take a bath. When's the last time you took a bath? That's crazy, I'll do it. We get to be surprised. Yay, that makes life fun, because if we just knew it was gonna happen, it'd be so boring. So if we start relating to this less with fear and this like guarded posture of I don't want to speak because I'm going to lose my job, to what is possible when I reach out to you and we see who we can become, it's a totally different orientation. And the nature of that invitation creates the possibility that exists on the other side. So it's basically a leap of faith. It's basically a leap of faith that I'm asking you to take. But when I extend myself to you with love and openness, when I say I see you and I stand for you and I want all the best for you, you're likely to give that back to me. We play energetic ping pong with each other all the time. And we can only control our own states, so claim the power that you have and be generous in that way. So now we're going to do another practice, because listening to me talk is super boring if that's all we did, because I want you to make change in your life. And no one should ever just like talk full stop in a room for a really long time, because all the wisdom's right here. It's all right here. So go back to your lovely people sitting next to you, and I want to ask you, in regards to the stuckness that you identified, the throw up on your feet one, when you listen into it, what's the information about the antidote? What is the corrective action, measure, invitation, practice that you could bring forward to address the stuckness that you identified? And then what is a commitment that you will take and live out in the next week as you go back to your organization? Discuss. Thank you so much. To my production friends, curious if we can access the questions. If anyone has submitted any questions in our fun technology portal. If there are any questions right now, I have time for maybe one or two questions. Oh, great. So, one question is, how do you operate and navigate within the double bind situation in a company with a tradition, I presume this says, with a traditional power definition? Find the wiggle room. Force yourself to become creative about it and see where your leaders want to grow, because honestly, there's a business incentive underneath all of this. The thing that's really threatened is our egos. It's our ego structure that gets threatened when we go at these things. And oftentimes the journey in command and control leadership to self-organizing leadership is that those who have the most institutionalized power have to let go and step back. And there can be a fear of, do I lose my utility? Do I lose my value in the organization? The answer is no, you don't. You just become more of a coach and a steward and a guide to the system rather than the director or the conductor. So you can both present the rationale for what's possible in the evolution of their leadership journey, the return to the business if they let go of control and the ways that people are holding back their creativity, and even the smaller steps can be anytime you see a small win, go for it and speak your truth and see what's possible. So how to move look at all these questions popping up. Okay, only gonna take one more. So how does this work contribute to building more adaptive cultures? The way this work contributes to building more adaptive cultures is that when we sense more deeply, when we sense more regularly, we get faster at responding. When our response time is, it took me 2 weeks to realize that my back was thrown out, and then I did something about it, to, I'm sitting, I need to shift my pelvis so that my spine is more upright so I have a more effective posture. Then we're inhabiting regular health through shorter feedback loops as individuals and as organizations. And when you empower the sensing efficacy of everyone on your team, then you become a self-correcting system. And that's ultimately what we're trying to go towards. But we have to let go of the ways that we shame sensing and why we avoid doing it in order to get across that threshold. If we can go back to the slides. Thank you so much for bringing up Slido. So in ending, my call to action to you is to seek the dragons and learn from them. There's a ceremony that I was preparing for, because part of my work is doing ceremony design, which translated into different language is creating containers for transformation that are deeply imprinting and relevant to people. So there was a ceremony I was preparing for, and I got the wisdom delivered to me that when the dragon approaches and opens its mouth, stick your head inside. Super fun, right? Can't wait. But in the experience of that ceremony, the dragon approached and it's opened its mouth, and I dove in, and through that confrontation of the fear, it took me to places that I needed to see that unlocked my power and my gifts. That's what happens when we go into the uncomfortable and the shadowy places. They hold information for our gifts. They hold the pearl. And at this time, on this planet, we need everyone to step into their courage, to step into their sensing, to bring their creativity. We cannot wait. These small moments that we hold, where we hold back our voice and we hold back our truth and our light, we have to put those down. The coral reef that I showed in the beginning is asking you to do that. The people in your company are asking you to do that. Your family is asking you to do that. I am asking you to do that because as someone who almost died and had to fight to come back to life, I have to say, it's not worth it to wait. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Please go towards the things that terrify you and hold the possibility that you can find your greatness within them, that you can be a contribution to everyone in your company through your truth and your courage and your kindness. That by sensing power, we can bring out aliveness and service to all of those we work with. Thank you for all of the work that you have done, all of the commitments you just made, and all the work you will do. I'm excited for the future that we're walking into and what you're creating. Thank you so much.